Joining me now is Kellyanne Conway, Donald Trump's campaign manager. Kellyanne, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Jake.
So, with a couple of exceptions, Mr. Trump right now is trailing in all the battleground states. He's plummeted with white college-educated voters, which is an especially important group for Republicans to win, especially with women white college-educated voters. He was supposed to give a big speech on Saturday at Gettysburg talking about his first 100 days as president, but his message was lost to some because he started with this 15-minute rant against the media and his accusers, saying that they're liars. He's going to sue them all. Did you know that that beginning part against the media and his accusers was going to be the start of the speech?
Well, I was there at the speech yesterday in Gettysburg, Jake, and I think the most important part of the speech is what you said, which is the 9-point plan, his promise to the American voters. I worked on the original contract with America with Newt Gingrich, and I'll tell you it's very similar in this regard. It's specific, it's solution-centric, and it is new. And what would be new if people covered it fairly? It's right in there how he's going to create 25 million jobs. The and child care tax credit that benefits all Americans is in there. That should be of great interest to those white college-educated women that you were talking about, and frankly to all Americans. He also talked about educational opportunities, expanding vocational and technical educational opportunities. Not all of us go to 2- and 4-year colleges, but we should have those opportunities to support ourselves by burnishing skill sets when we're in high school or trade school. And it went on and on to talk about securing the border, some of his signature issues. But what was also new yesterday, Jake, as in his Gettysburg speech, is really taking the case to his new tagline, draining the swamp in Washington. How this lifetime ban on lobbying, if you've worked in his White House, you can't lobby for foreign nations. That's sort of the big ethical shower we're all going to need to take post Hillary Clinton's State Department.
So I want to talk about draining the swamp in a second, but just to underline the point, the difference between the contract for America that you worked on and Mr. Trump's speech yesterday is that Speaker Gingrich wouldn't come out and spend 15 minutes railing against people accusing him of misdeeds, railing against the media. He would just go in and start talking about the issues that matter to the American people. So I just wonder, did you know he was going to start with this list of grievances that might undercut the message?
Well, he delivers his own speeches. This is his candidacy. He's the guy who's running for the White House, and he has the privilege to say what he wants. At the same time, I will tell you, having worked on the messaging in and around the actual contract with America 20-some years ago, Jake, there was plenty of talk then about how we as Republicans could not get a fair shake from the media. And I think, look, I agree with you. I saw you quoted somewhere saying it was, quote, horrifying that someone at CNN had shared a question with Hillary Clinton in a competitive town hall against Bernie Sanders. I agree with you, Jake Tapper. It is horrifying. Also horrifying is having a print reporter telling John Podesta, I'm, quote, a hack now. So here, have the privilege of editorial latitude on what I'm about to publish. Is there anything here that bothers you? This is not journalism. This is, at its best, cozy relationships, collaboration, all the way to collusion. So, you know, we feel very frustrated. It's not all members of the media. It's not even most members of the media. But look at the stories that are being written now. The path to 270 is narrow. The path to 270 is over. That's so unfair to the voters who are yet to go to the ballot box and exercise their constitutional right to tell us who should be president of the United States and commander-in-chief. Let's let the voters tell us who they want to be president and not have all these people who don't share their economic woes, who don't share their lack of health insurance, who don't share their lack of failing schools, who don't share their white-knuckle decisions at the end of each month whether to afford the rent or maybe a nice birthday party for a 6-year-old kid. I mean, let's give the voters their chance to express their will and not tell them now the race is over.
I'm not saying the race is over, but just to underline one point, nobody at CNN shared questions with the Clinton campaign. That's a separate issue, but I don't want to talk about that right now. Let's talk about Mr. Trump's call to drain the swamp. One of the things that he wants to do is to amend the Constitution so that one can only serve 6 years in the House, 6 years in the Senate. Now, Donald Trump's running mate, current governor, former member of the House, Mike Pence, he served 12 years in the House when Mike Pence was leading the fight against the Wall Street bailout in his 8th year. Was he part of the swamp?
Well, he was definitely living in the swamp, but in the case of Mike Pence, who's been a friend and a client for many years, I can tell you those were dark days for him because he was up against Republican president, also voting against No Child Left Behind, voting against TARP, voting against the Medicare Part D. Very difficult to do that against a member of your own party when he's president. But Mike Pence and people like him gave that principled commitment to the people of Indiana's 6th congressional district at the time, and he, in fact, held his promises. We don't see that from everyone.
Well, I'm saying,
but
the proposal would bar somebody like Mike Pence from serving more than 6 years, and it sounds like you think that's exactly the kind of person who should be in Congress.
And Mike Pence would agree with Donald Trump on that when you're there for too long, you need that fresh blood and new perspective. I wish there were more members like Mike Pence. If there were, we maybe wouldn't need to have the conversation. And you see what he's done in the state of Indiana as well.
Let's talk about this idea that everything's rigged. Yesterday, Mr. Trump once again arguing that the election will be rigged. It's a charge that he makes with no real evidence to suggest it, that many Republican secretaries of state and others are very upset that he is making. Now, back in April, when you were working against Donald Trump, when you were supporting Ted Cruz and advising his super PAC, you had some tough words for Mr. Trump when he was lashing out at the time against the system being rigged. Take a listen.
We hear from the Trump campaign, the rules change, it's not fair, the system's rigged, the system's corrupt. You can whine and complain all you want that you didn't know the rules.
Is this a pattern with Mr. Trump? If he starts losing, he starts lashing out and calling the system corrupt and calling it rigged?
We love watching that clip together, but that was actually about what was happening on the weekends, where Donald Trump would win the vote. He would win all the basically all the electoral votes in a state, and then on the weekends, the Cruz campaign would go back and follow the rules and get back some of those delegates. So no, it's not a pattern for him. I think if you had Hillary Clinton in this chair and you asked her every hypothetical situation possible, would she respect the results of the election? What if, just hypothetically speaking, since it happened in 2000, out of 6 million votes cast in Florida, there was a difference of 530 or so? Would Hillary Clinton accept the election result? Would Donald Trump be forced to? Or would they do what Al Gore did, which is concede the election to George W. Bush, call back and retract the concession, and then throw it into an unprecedented 5 or 6 weeks, Jake, until the United States Supreme Court decided who the
And that's not, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing.
It is.
No, because there was a state-mandated recount because the margin of error was so small. Donald Trump is out there saying that if he loses Pennsylvania, for example, a state that has not gone Democratic for president since 1988, he's saying the only way he's going to lose Pennsylvania is if it's stolen. I mean, he is right now telling people that if he loses, it's because there will be corruption, and there's no evidence of it. You can't compare that to a state-mandated recount. There's always state-mandated recounts. There's going to be one, at least one, on November 8th, after November 8th, because some elections come in close. He is saying the entire system is rigged, and that's not the same thing.
The system is rigged, and especially against the little guy. There's no question about that.
I'm talking about the election system. The election system.
Together.
The election system. He's talking about the integrity of American democracy.
Right. Well, if we were so worried and so high-minded about the integrity of American democracy, then somebody would really get their hair on fire, Jake, about the fact that Hillary Clinton's foundation took millions of dollars from countries that disrespect women, this advocate for women. I mean, let's not get so high-minded and sanctimonious about American democratic principles when we won't even take her to account. We spent 23 minutes on the 3 major networks talking about these accusers to Donald Trump, and 57 seconds talking about the newly revealed information we have about what Hillary Clinton and her senior staff think about people.
Do you know how we know that they took money from countries like Saudi Arabia and others? Is because the Clinton Foundation discloses that information, unlike Mr. Trump, who was the first major presidential candidate since 1976 to not release his tax returns. So this is the reason why a lot of politicians don't like to release returns, because then people like you will attack Hillary Clinton for taking that money, or people like me will ask her about the hypocrisy of taking money from a country that oppresses women and oppresses gays. I agree that's a legitimate charge, but the point is she discloses that information. Mr. Trump does.
So that's okay that she takes that money?
No, I'm just saying that.
She who's fighting for women and children?
I'm not saying it okay. No, I just said it wasn't. I just said it was hypocritical.
I promise you that Mr. Trump's taxes do not say that he takes millions and millions of dollars. And I promise you it doesn't say that his spouse gave a 90-minute speech in Russia, pocketed $500,000 for that speech, and then turned around and helped a cohort, get uranium rights.
We have no idea what ties.
I promise you Melania Trump did not give a speech.
Okay, fine. But we have no idea what his ties are and where there might be moneyed interests and conflicts of interest, because he won't disclose his tax returns.
Here's what we do know. We know that, as he said yesterday in Gettysburg, Jake, that he used to be an insider. He's somebody who breathed the rarefied air right up there with the Clintons and others, given his position, his power, and his wealth, and his great success as a businessman. And yet that gives him the credibility and the legitimacy to go and fight the system from the outside in. He knows how corrosive and corrupt it is. We're learning now it's a whole axis, AXIS, between some in the media, between the Clintons, between their senior advisors, between the system. And listen, this is all about, his entire campaign is built about the little guy being the victim, the forgotten man, forgotten woman being the victim of the rigged, corrupt system. And let's keep the focus there. That's who he's fighting for. I know so many in the media like to just dismiss the crowd sizes. Let me tell you something. You go out on the road with Donald Trump, this election doesn't feel over.
Kellyanne Conway, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.